Hello guys, this is Marwan, and today we are going to talk about how you can create an interactive progress bar that will allow you to move on from this boring spinner with no useful information to the user to something that is a lot more UX friendly, like this, with a message and interactive progress bar. So without further ado, let's jump into it. So let's close that one, the complete example, refresh the incomplete example, and get into the code. So I've had some of the, or actually most of the code done for you. That includes the form fields, the validation, and the spinner. And I'll quickly walk you through. So we have an app that has this form that uses Material UI fields, and it does 3 API requests to a server that we have added here in the backend directory, and we're mimicking that it takes 4 seconds, 5.5 seconds, and 5.5 seconds to mimic a heavy process for us to see on the loading. So here we can see that on the loading state we can see that circular progress, and once it succeeds we display that success message, because we're assuming that this is some kind of a complaint submission system. So let's see, what do we need to do to convert it from this, the boring one that we have at the moment, to the more fancy one that we have seen. So I have the steps listed here, or the goals that we need to do. We need to know how many API requests to be done for X form submission, how many API requests have been done for X form submission, the current step submission loading message, let's say getting user info, getting pricing, and so on, incremental progress bar, and we add the message below it. So these are our big picture goals, and let's dive into the implementation. So let's start by defining the variables. So we would say API request done, set API requests done, and we can initialize this with, let's initialize it with 3 for now, and I'll walk you through how you can add a function that counts the API request to be done in a function later on. And then we would need API, that is actually API request count, which is the total API requests to be made for a form submission to be complete. And then here, how many of those 3 have been done so far, and based on these 2 values we calculate the progress bar filling percentage. And then we will need also loading message, set loading message equal use state of an empty string. Do we need something else? I think it should be good. These are all the variables that we need at the moment, and we need to have the incremental progress bar. So this is not something that is very complex, but to save up time I will paste it here, and I will add it to the paste list. I think I have added it already. Yeah, it is here. So we do have this component that uses the linear progress component from Material UI, and just a typography below it, and we use this box to centralize, or to make it centered within the screen, and this wrapper to handle the display / hide of it. And the properties that we take is the loading state, yes or true, yes or no, the loading message, API request done, API request count, and then we calculate the percentage, like the progress value, based on the API request done, and the API request count multiplied by 100, of course. And this is the typing for TypeScript, so nothing so fancy. So let's see how can we add this into our page. So first things first, let's add it here to replace the circular spinner, and just pass in the variables API requests done, and then loading is the loading state, and then message is loading message within this scope. So that should be good as a starter. Let's refresh. If we try to submit now, we can see that we see this, but it doesn't do anything. Yeah, so let's get back to the code and see how can we optimize this, or I mean get this working. So let's say after getting this step done, we would set API requests done to be 1, set API requests done to be 2, set API requests done to be 3. So at least now we can see some kind of a progressive loading behavior. And to see this in action, let's throttle the network a bit and submit this. So now we would expect to see this. Let me see, maybe we have a course error. So let's not throttle it now and just try to debug. Does it throw any course errors? It does. Let me quickly make sure that it's added. Okay, I think I did add it, but I forgot to restart my server after whitelisting this port. So let's try again. Okay, let me see, does it work? It does. So now we can see this interactive behavior of this taking some time and then moving to the next step and so on. So let's make this even better. Let's go back and add the message. So let's say we would say maybe by that step, or before we do that step, let's say we would be saying maybe fetching user information, and maybe for the non-technical user, retrieving is a better word. And then maybe by that step we would say maybe initiating user complaint, maybe. And then maybe by that step we would be saying finalizing user complaint, whatever. These are just dummy messages for now. Let's go back and we try to submit this. So now we can see the message, and once we get done, we move the next step, the message changes, which is pretty cool. Let's go to further enhance this. So one of the biggest challenges with this is how do we know like how many API requests are we going to be making, and what happens if we increase this. So now we have a 4th request, but the API request count is actually 3, which is going to be very inconvenient. So that means by the time we add any API request, we should increase this, which is not cool. So how do we make it cool? So I've created a function that allows us to count the number of async requests we are going to be making, and this is using Regex, and it returns the number of async requests within within a function. So what we would do is we would go to this form and we would have a use effect upon mounting, like the base regular use effect, and we would set API requests count to be equal to count awaits. I think it's not. Okay, I think we just need to do restart TS server, and then we try to import again. Yep, and then we pass the function itself. So here we can actually keep this at 0, and then we can pass this, and then it will count the number of async requests to be made in this function, and based on this it sets up that variable. Let's make sure that this works. So let's go back here and try to submit, and now we would expect that it would move in a 3-step flow because it's 3 API requests to be made. Let's see if it works. It does work. Let's ensure that it works for the next one as well. Same. Perfect. So that means we're still persisting the same behavior, but now we have more of an automated way of handling this. And let's verify that. See if we had another one, and we will also optimize this, but just bear with me. So now if we added a 4th request, and this is where the count functionality will come in handy. So you would see the progress bar is now moving 25% instead of 30, and now it's going to move to 50, and then move to 75, and so on. So this will allow you to scale up this functionality without worrying too much about having to update some variable after you update the submission logic. So that is, we're almost done. We would add another function that would say maybe increment steps done, and then this would take a message of string, and this would try to do would first thing set loading message to be the message it's passed, that was passed to it. And then it would increment, so we'd check if API request done is less than API request count, then we would set API requests done to be equal to the previous value plus 1. And then we would also update the message, and here instead of explicitly specifying how many steps were done, we can replace this with this increment steps done, and we can pass in the next loading message like here. Then we can do the same thing, replace this, put it here, and then at that point we can also maybe change that to, we can remove the 4th request actually. Yeah, and we don't need to have an increment. Actually we do. We can just replace this with done, for example. We can also make this optional, so it's either message or empty string. And the one reason that we need to explicitly set the message here in the first step, because we are not incrementing steps done yet. So let's go back and go through this one last time. So we would see it now move to 33%, and then 66%, and then it should go to 100. Yep, perfect. Yeah, so this way you can move your logic to be like your loading spinner to be a bit more interactive, and by this counting function it will be a bit more declarative, so you don't need to explicitly specify how many requests you would be having, and if you add more it will detect it and adjust this accordingly. Yep, I think that is it. I hope that was useful, and if you have any questions you can drop it down in the comments below. I would be happy to help. Thank you and have a good day.